Hello and welcome to our 7th video in statistics. I'm Mr. Chowdhury and today we're going to be looking at cumulative frequency. In particular, we're going to be looking at cumulative frequency tables and cumulative frequency graphs. So before we do anything, we need to know what cumulative frequency is. And cumulative frequency is the sum of the frequencies and all the frequencies prior to that frequency. Just think of it as a running total. So for example, here's a regular table that we have, and as you can see, it's just the grades of a class and then the frequency of those grades appearing. So 5 people got a 6, 9 people got a 7, 8 people got an 8, and 3 people got a 9. That's a regular frequency table. Now, a cumulative frequency table would look something like this, where the categories have changed. So it's grade 6, then it's grade 6 to 7, grade 6 to 8, grade 6 to 9. And the cumulative frequency comes from the other table. So if you have a look, so grade 6s stays the same, it's just 5. Okay, so to find our grade 6 to 7, what we need to do is we need to look at all the grade 6s and all the grade 7s and add them together. So sum them up, find the running total. So we've got 5 and 9, that gives me 14. Okay, so the next one, grade 6 to 8. Well, we're going to look at grades 6, 7, and 8, and that means I do 5, add 9, add 8, or I can just do 14, add 8, which will give me 22. And finally, we have our grade 6 to 9. That's everybody there because everyone got a grade between a grade 6 and a grade 9. I just add all those numbers up and I get 25. So that's where our cumulative frequency table comes from. It is just the frequencies, and as we're going along, we're just adding them up. We are accumulating the frequency. We are finding the running total. So just to give you a bit of practice time, here's what I'd like you to do is for each of these tables, what would the cumulative frequency table look like? What would the cumulative frequency table look like? Pause the video, have a go at that, please. Okay, so let's have a look at these answers. Here they are. So we're looking at numbers of pets this time. We're looking at numbers of pets. So if you look at the first table, people with 0 pets is always 10. People with 0 or 1 pet is 15, because that's the 5 people with the 1 pet plus the 10 people who have 0 pets. 0 to 2 pets is basically the 5 people with 2 pets plus the 5 people with 1 pet plus the 10 people with no pets. They're added together to give us this one. Now the last one, we wouldn't usually include this, but I've included it just to give you some sort of consistency so you can see where they come from. And it's the same kind of thing for the other two. We are just finding the running total. We are just adding them on as we go along to try and complete our cumulative frequency tables. So hopefully you can draw a cumulative frequency table from a regular frequency table. And before we move on, you just need to know the key points of how to do that. So the key things are, the cumulative frequency tells us the running total. It's the total as you go along, right? The groups always start with the first value. So if you look at the last one, they were 0 was our first value. So we went 0 to 1, then 0 to 2, then 0 to 3. So we always started at 0, which is our first value. And the last group should be the same as the sample size or population. So the last group should have the value that is the total amount of people you surveyed, or the sample size you had, or the population. And we kind of need the cumulative frequency to find medians from tables. So if you go back to finding averages from a table, if you go back and watch that video, you can see that we're kind of using the cumulative frequency to help us find the median when we're working in tables. So just to check your understanding, what I'd like you to do is answer this question. So I've filled in the first bit for you. So 120 to 125, I fill that in for you. You just need to fill in the rest of them and answer these questions. Pause the video, have a go at that, please. Okay, so now let's have a look at our answers. So your completed cumulative frequency graph should look like this. And the way we can check if we've done this right is, I know that there are 100 students that are taking part in this experiment, or they're just 100 people's data was collected, and we can see that the last value in our cumulative frequency graph is 100 as well. We can see that very clearly. Now to answer the rest of them, we're just going to go over to our whiteboard. So we've answered question A, so that one's been done, so we can tick that one off. That one's done. Part B was how many students were at most 130 centimeters tall. So we just look at the 130 centimeters on our cumulative frequency graph. So we're looking at this value here, this value here. So we're looking at 54 as our answer, because there are 54 people who are up to 130 centimeters tall. Okay, the next one is how many students are more than 130 centimeters tall. So if I know I've got 100 students and I know 54 of them are up to 130 centimeters tall, if I just do that as a subtraction, I will get the answer, which in this case is 46. So that's how many people are more than 100 centimeters tall. And it says in which class interval is our median. So if there's 100 people, we're going to try and find out which class would have our 50th person. So if you have a look, that one's got 15. The 50th person would be in this class. So our class would be 120, okay, less than h less than or equal to 130, and they are our answers. So you can mark your answers now, please. Okay, so now that we've done that and we're happy with drawing cumulative frequency tables and answering a couple of questions from cumulative frequency tables, it's important to understand that we can also draw cumulative frequency graphs. And to draw a cumulative frequency graph, you need to know the following things. So this is what a cumulative frequency graph would look like, and it has the following characteristics. So we need to ensure that when we're doing our cumulative frequency graphs, they all look the same. So they all look like this. They need to have axes. So I've got my axes, we would normally label them. I've got my points, which I would mark by X. So when I'm drawing my graph, I'd have to draw points on myself, and I'd usually mark them with an X. And the last one is should be a curve. So it should be a nice smooth curve without any straight lines. So we're not going to take a ruler and join up each point like we would do in probably like in a line graph. We're just going to draw a nice smooth curve. So we're going to draw the cumulative frequency for this data. So here's our data set. We're going to draw the cumulative frequency graph for this piece of data. So to help us draw this, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give you what the axes should look like. So your axes should look like this. You could do it on some graph paper. It would be significantly more accurate if you did it on graph paper. If you're just using your books, I will also be using a book just to show you that you can still do it. Obviously, graph paper would be ideal, but if you don't have any graph paper to hand, you can just do it in your book. So if you could draw this axis into your books, if you could draw these axes into your books, and then we'll go over to our whiteboard to have a look at how to answer this question, how we would draw this cumulative frequency graph. So pause the video, grab your book, draw these axes in, please. Okay, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to draw this into your books. As I've said earlier, if you had graph paper, it'd be significantly more accurate and just better to draw it on graph paper. But I will do it on a book just to show you how you might want to approach this. So if you go to our book or our whiteboard in this case, and we're going to try and plot these graphs. So the way it would work is this. We are going to plot at the end of each class. So at the end of each class. So the first point we're going to plot is at 125, because that is at the end. That's the end of the first class. So I'm going to go to 125. I'm going to go up to 15 on my graph, and I'm just going to draw a little X there. There you go. That's where 15 would be. And then I go to 130 and I go up to 54. So for me, I'm going to have to scroll up to 54. So there's 130. I follow it up. That's 50. Right, that would be 53, so 54 is about here. Okay, the next one, I'm going to go to 135 and I'm going to go up to 82. So I take that, I move my paper up, make sure I'm in line with it. I go up to 80, which is here. That's where 80 is. 82 would just be about there. Remember, if I was on graph paper, I'd be significantly more accurate. Because I'm doing it in a book, it's slightly different. The next one would be 93. So I go to 140 and I go up to 93. So that is 90 there. That is 90 there. If you can see it, there it is. That's 90. So that means 93 would be there. And obviously my last point would be 145, which would be right on the end there. Okay, so now if you look, I've plotted all of my points in my cumulative frequency graph. All of the points are plotted. My next step would be to take a pencil. So I take a pencil and I draw a smooth curve going through all of these points. A smooth curve going through all of these points. I need to make sure I go through every one. It may be useful. You're going to need a little bit of practice. So some of you may need to do this a couple of times. You just rub it out and do it again. I've had a lot of practice doing this, so I'm pretty confident that I can do this in one go. So I go to the first point, following my smooth curve. There we are, my smooth curve like that, and there's my cumulative frequency graph. Very straightforward, drawn in there, as accurate as I can be on this squared paper. Now you may be asking yourself, well, how useful are cumulative frequency graphs, sir? How can we use them? Well, they're very useful because we can use them to do a lot of things. So I could, from my cumulative frequency graph, find a median. Now the way I do that is I know that there are 100 people taking part in this. So my median would be the 50th person roughly. So I go to 50, there it is, and I just follow along from 50. I follow along until I hit my cumulative frequency graph. Follow along till I hit my there it is. I've hit my cumulative frequency graph, and then I go straight down like so, as straight as I can. Obviously you use a ruler for this, so I get my ruler out and I go straight down, and that number there would roughly be my median. So I can say maybe my median is about 129 as my median. Obviously the more accurate you can be, the better. As I said, if I did it on graph paper, I'd be significantly more accurate than I am here, but we can see we can find a median there. We can even find quartiles if we wanted to. So quartiles out of 100, a quarter of 100 would be 25. So all I'm doing is I'm going up to 25, which would be roughly here. That's where 25 would be. I draw a line straight across till I hit my graph. So there I am. I'm going to draw my line straight across, hit my graph. Then I go straight down. I'll just pull this away to give myself a bit more room. I go straight down. What's that value there? What's this value here? Well, the difference here is 5. I'd say that is about 127 as my lower quartile. And I could also find my upper quartile. I'd just go from 75, which would be here. I'd go across. Take my ruler, go across like that till I hit the graph. Then I go straight down there, and I could say my upper quartile, which was here. You can't see there. There's my upper quartile, and that could be about 133. Obviously, I'm estimating because I can't be super accurate. I don't have the little gaps that graph paper would have. Obviously, if I drew this on graph paper, I'd have significantly more accurate answers. But it's important to see that we can do it on any form of paper. You can do it in a book, you can do it on your graph paper. I assume most of you would be doing it on a book anyway, so I thought I'd do it the way with the equipment that you have to hand. So ideally we'd have graph paper to be more accurate. Now, just to clarify, cumulative frequency tables and graphs are very simple to draw. You just need to do some practice on doing them. What I suggest you do is go watch Mr. Amoson's video and do some practice. If you're feeling super confident, you can go on Dr. Frost or Corbett Maths and do some more practice on there. Go off, be productive, and I'll see you in the next video.